Lewis Hamilton's swap to Ferrari came as a shock to the entire Formula One grid. During his time at Mercedes, he became the driver with the most pole positions, the most race wins, and therefore became the most successful driver in Formula One history. But what does success for Lewis look like now he's racing in red? Does he need to win a race, beat Charles Leclerc, battle for a championship? Let's look at each of the 7 hurdles that Hamilton could face in his first year and decide which of these hurdles need to be jumped and which might just be a little bit too high. Of course, the first thing that came to mind were the other recent world champions that have raced for the Scuderia. Switching teams to Ferrari when you've already achieved success elsewhere is always going to write headlines. Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel were given the task of turning Ferrari into a world championship winning team once again, but neither of them succeeded. And if anything, Hamilton's move is an even bigger deal, as Hamilton isn't just successful for being a multiple world champion, but is statistically the most successful driver of all time. Although on the flip side of that, he's not being brought into the team to be the team's long-term future because they have Charles Leclerc. So deciding what could be seen as a success for Hamilton isn't as simple as saying, well, he can only be seen as a success if he wins the championship. Hamilton's success at Ferrari, especially during this first season, depends much more upon the structures that are set in place by Fred Vasseur and on Hamilton's raw pace inside the Ferrari car, which is why the first and most crucial step that Hamilton needs to take in his Ferrari career, and what some of you said would be more than enough for Hamilton to call his first season at Ferrari a success, is getting up to speed with the car. After having been at Mercedes for so long and through various different regulation cycles with them, the swap to a new team is initially going to take some getting used to. He needs to get to know the Ferrari team and integrate himself into the culture of Ferrari. There are going to be so many new people and so many new processes to take in, with the biggest of those being his departure from having Bono beside him every single race to his new race engineer, Riccardo Adami. If he can end the season having gotten used to his new surroundings, have an understanding of how he functions within the team, and get to the point with the car where he's comfortable driving it to his style and maybe maximizing the car's potential in a few races towards the end of the season, both benefiting him and Ferrari. For a driver of Hamilton's caliber, I think we're setting the bar quite low, but I can see how that could be seen as a success. As we move through the hurdles and get towards the more difficult challenges that Hamilton could face, I do understand that these could be largely dependent on the performance ceiling of the Ferrari car, but I think this hurdle of scoring more points than he did last year in 2024 should be an attainable goal, even if the Ferrari car isn't incredible. Last year, he really struggled at Mercedes to find any kind of rhythm, and his form throughout the season fluctuated massively from race to race, meaning he finished 7th in the standings and only scored 223 championship points. And to beat that this year, he'd only need to average around 10 points per race weekend. If you look at the relative performance of where the Mercedes car was last year to where the Ferrari car was, there's already a clear gap in consistency between those two cars. I would say even if the Ferrari stagnates and doesn't upgrade at all from where it was last year, as long as he hits that first goal of getting up to speed with the car and having a few race weekends where he maximizes the car's performance, he should at least beat last year's score comfortably, which is why I can only see this as the second rung on the success ladder. I know I'm mixing metaphors there, hurdles, ladders, it's kind of both. From that, the next level is where I'm going to put winning the Constructors' Championship. And I think a lot of people would have this much higher up on the list of things that would make the season successful for Hamilton, and say that if he wins the Constructors' Championship, that is surely guaranteed to be a successful season. He's coming in and being part of something that Ferrari hasn't done for almost 2 decades. But under certain circumstances, you can be carried to a Constructors' Championship victory. Let's look at Sergio Perez in 2023. I would not say that that was a successful season for Sergio, but Red Bull still managed to win the Constructors' Championship because Max managed to win almost every single race. If we had a similar scenario where, say, Charles Leclerc wins 20 out of 24 races and Hamilton is completely carried to a Constructors' Championship victory with just a few more points than last season because the Ferrari car is just so much better than the rest of the field, I know that would be the extreme end of this scenario, and the Constructors' Championship win would be a success for the team, of course, but for it to be a success for Hamilton on a personal level, the manner in which the Constructors' Championship is won also matters. Because I think if he does go on to win the Constructors' Championship with the Ferrari team, it would only be a success for Hamilton individually if he also managed to win a few races along the way, which is what I'm seeing as the next hurdle for Hamilton to jump. The number of races that people expect Hamilton to win does divide opinion a little bit, again because one of the things that is out of his hands is how quick the Ferrari car is compared to the rest of the field, but this was one of the most common answers among my community as to what people are expecting Hamilton to be able to achieve in this first season. Looking at how he won 2 races last year in a Mercedes car, I think it's reasonable to say that he should win more than that, but then Leclerc only won 3 races last year, and Norris only managed 4 victories last season, so it's really tough to put an exact number on it. I think it's more the fact that getting those victories under his belt would mean that he's proven he has a good baseline understanding of the car heading into 2026, which I personally think, and many others see, as the most important thing with the 2026 regulation changes opening the door to so many possibilities for the entire grid next year. With that said, we're still focusing on 2025, and beyond getting a few wins, season-long consistency would be the next target to achieve. Because even though, as we mentioned before, Lewis managed to get 2 wins last year, we also noted that Hamilton's form and performances fluctuated massively, leading to his overall points total being 7th best and him being beaten by every other driver other than Sergio Perez from the top 4 teams. And Sergio Perez was fired for being bad. The cynic in me wants to say that he just needs to finish above both of the Mercedes drivers in the championship just to show them what they're missing. However, let's not be that petty, and looking at the points of the other drivers from last season, across 24 races, a top 5 finish would have required 290 points, although with Sainz missing a race, that could have been closer to the 300-point mark. So I would say a top 4 finish in the championship with 300 or more points would be an outright success for Lewis. It would mean that he'd outscored himself from last year, he would have at least matched Carlos Sainz's level of performance in a car that he's brand new to driving, meaning he would have had to have been pretty close to Leclerc at multiple races in the season, and he would have likely beaten both of the Mercedes drivers. That is unless Ferrari has the fastest car like Red Bull did in 2023, and then P2 in the standings should be the bare minimum. Now we're getting towards dream season territory in this list in my opinion, but some people would only see Hamilton's first season at Ferrari as a success if he was amongst the drivers at the end of the season battling for the championship. Along with Max Verstappen, looking at the end of the 2024 season, the drivers that look best set to be in a title battle for this year are Lando Norris, although he finished 2nd best to Max. He had last year to get used to battling for wins and understanding what's required to be at the front of the pack, plus that McLaren car looked to be the fastest across the most tracks. Or Charles Leclerc, who for me was the most consistent driver throughout the season. Once the Ferrari car got over its Spanish Grand Prix upgrade problems, I think Charles was the best, if not the 2nd best driver to Max Verstappen at ensuring he optimized his results. So for this to happen, Hamilton would not only have to be reasonably close to Leclerc, as Sainz was, who finished 66 points behind Charles, remember, but at least on par with Charles Leclerc. If Hamilton gets to the point where he's keeping Charles on his toes throughout the entire season and heading into the final part of the season is reasonably close to Leclerc and in contention for the championship win, that would be an incredibly impressive first season. And of course, the last hurdle to jump, making Lewis Hamilton's first season at Ferrari not just a success, but absolutely legendary, would be winning the Drivers' World Championship, becoming the out-and-out most decorated driver in Formula One history, not just in terms of pole positions, not just in terms of race wins, but also in terms of championships won, whilst returning Ferrari to the top step of motorsport would be a dream come true. I do think that this is almost impossible, but some people I've talked to whilst planning this video have set the bar this high. It would mean that the Ferrari car would have to be the best. I think going head to head with Red Bull or McLaren, beating Verstappen or Norris in the form that they were in last season would be a huge challenge, but also beating Charles Leclerc in the same car would take one of Lewis Hamilton's best seasons ever, if not his best season. If Hamilton can jump the final hurdle after getting up to speed with the car, beating his points total from last season, keeping pace with the rest of the title challengers before then coming out on top, I think he just retires then and there, because there is nothing that he could do that would be more impressive than that in his Formula One career. But I'd love to know what you think. How many of these hurdles do you think Hamilton will be able to jump during his first season at Ferrari? Let me know in the comments down below, and why not watch this video here where I break down all of the other driver pairings heading into 2025.